All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to our Network in Action Sales Mastery. Today, our presenter is someone who truly understands sales from the ground up. Rob Ficken didn't start in sales. He started as a field engineer in oil and gas. But what began as an unexpected path turned into a career where he's become a trusted advisor to major organizations like NASA, Google, and Corning. As a Sandler sales coach, Rob is known for his direct, no nonsense style and his ability to cut through what he calls head trash, the beliefs and habits that hold salespeople and business owners back from real growth. He specializes in building selling systems that actually work, strengthening accountability, improving prospecting, and developing leaders who can drive sustainable results. With a background that spans energy, aerospace, defense, medical, and consumer industries, and a degree in physics from Denison University, Rob brings both analytical thinking and real world experience to everything he teaches. Today, he's going to challenge how you think about sales, who's really in control of the process, and how to fix what's holding you back. So, I welcome Rob Ficken. You have the stage, brother.
All right. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. And I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. And we'll go over here. Boom. Can everybody see that all right to start?
We sure can.
All right. And for those of you that do have your cameras on, I love that. Thank you. You have to stare at my ugly mug for the next 30 minutes, but I love to see yours. Just kind of sets an equal stature for us to operate in. Also just want to set the stage of come off mute, raise your hand, whatever it is. If I'm talking through it, Dan, feel free to shout out and say, hey, we got some questions. Put them in the chat, whatever it is. The more interactive this is, the better. I love that. The classes we teach, we do predominantly virtual, but sorry, get this out of the way there. We try to make it as interactive as possible. And that's what today is going to be. We're going to do some games. We're going to listen. We're going to talk. We're going to ask questions and we're going to think a little bit. But I do like to start here with who I am. So who is Rob Ficken? Because there's always a human being behind all of our LLCs or our company, our roles, our titles. Selling is an honest profession between two human beings or more. So I break that into two parts. I like to start with my personal life before I talk about my professional life. So this is really my why. This is the important part of my life. This is what I actually want to do. If I could, from 9 to 5, I would be spending time with my family. Here's my wife and our son. We got him a drum kit for Christmas, which has been a little bit of a double-edged sword, as all the parents in the room can probably appreciate. But he loves banging those things, and we sit with a smile on our face and our AirPods in with the noise canceling on. My wife and I, we just ran our third half marathon. Love being outdoors. I'm not a good runner, but I am a good husband. We like to travel. We like to do things. We like to have experiences. Here are two dogs, Monty and Brody. Monty's actually laying on the floor here beside me. He's my COO, and this is why I do what I do: is to live experiences with my family. But what actually affords me the ability to do these things is my career. So, as Dan mentioned, and I appreciate, I started in oil and gas like a lot of the schmucks in Houston. I was on oil rigs, and come 2015, I was laid off. I was an engineer, and the downturn of oil. I was one of the many that was laid off, but I had a big old smile on my face because I was tired of living in trailers and on oil rigs for months at a time, and it was absolute kismet. I stumbled my way on accident into sales with a company called James Walker. Still stayed in the oil and gas space, but I had no idea what sales was. I had the stereotype of, the sleazy salesman, slick back hair and an oversized suit, just trying to sell me something, not really caring about being an advocate for me or my needs. But that was my head trash. That was my incorrect preconceived notion of what selling is and what salespeople can be. So I gained some experience. I worked with huge oil and gas companies, the Schlumbergers of the world, where I started, but with Shell and Exxon and BP and GE, Halliburton, and really got my feet wet in the world of selling and realized that I love the interpersonalness and the communication of it. From there, I actually moved to a startup. I was in the manufacturing world, and I learned that, hey, with a good company can also have good culture, and I love that. I really got in, neck deep where I had just gotten my feet wet. I got in neck deep into sales and learned so much more about selling into different industries and different roles and different levels. And I built my way up. The company was acquired by a publicly traded manufacturing company in the US. And I worked my way up to be a strategic account manager. So, just to pat myself on the back, my 3 clients were NASA, which I loved, and I loved seeing the Artemis project. I actually worked on some of that. Not that I can disclose much, but saw some of those fruits of my labor actually in action. So I worked with NASA, Google, and Corning Glass, like the glass on your iPhone. And then I kind of felt like I was hitting the ceiling, but the company I was working with actually contracted Sandler to coach our sales team. And what I found was a system that I resonated with. I was able to identify my wins with the Sandler process and where I wasn't winning with the Sandler process, and kind of pick apart and better myself, better my process with a methodology. And so I started my own Sandler training business, and I've been practicing what I preach, and I love it. So that's me. That's where I came from. And we're going to start off with a little game. I'm going to just set up the stage real quick. We're going to have a bunch of numbers on the screen. And what I want you to do is find the numbers in sequential order in 30 seconds and see how high you can get. So I saw somebody just popped in, so I'll give them a second just to read the screen. But you're going to have 30 seconds, and I'm going to set a timer, and just count as high as you can get from 1, maybe all the way up to 100. And then we'll come back and we'll see how far we get. Any questions? Pretty straightforward. All right. So 3, 2, 1, let's go. 30 seconds. See how high you can get. And that's time. All right. 30 seconds flies, right? But the awkward silence is over. So start shouting out who got past 5.
9.
Yo.
Now I heard a 9. Anybody higher than 9?
No.
I got to 11.
11. Scott, I saw you raise your hand. How high did you get, Scott?
14.
14. Anybody beat 14? Come off mute.
16.
Ooh, 16. That's a good one. All
You're
right.
using a bot, man.
There was somebody the other day in one of the NIA groups that said 69. I said, what? And all she was doing was just counting across the top and just counting numbers, and totally missed the point of the game. But 16, that's a solid number. I think the first time I did this, I maybe got to 7. So, but there's a trick to this. This is broken into quadrants. And the first number, top left, 1 up here. Top right is the next number. Bottom left, next number. Bottom right, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to set another 30-second timer. We're going to do that again, and we're going to see how high we get. All right? 3, 2, 1, go. All right, and that is time. without even just saying the number, who got higher than they did last time? Yeah, see hands raised.
Yes.
Yes. What does that tell us? Why did we play this game? Anybody? Shout it out.
System.
Yeah, who said that?
Karen.
Karen. Exactly, Karen. There's a system to it, right? And if we know the system, if we know the steps we have to take to go from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, we can get further. We can get further easier. We can even just get to the same point that we were easier. We can operate more efficiently when we know the rules of the game, right? And the same thing can apply to sales. If we know the game that you're playing between a buyer and a seller, a dance, and the steps we have to take in that dance, we can operate more confidently. We can get further more easily, more efficiently, and we can just know the game we're playing. Does that make sense to everybody? At a high level, if you know the selling cycle you're going to go through, the next step you're going to go through in your selling process and how you're going to do that, you can do it more easily, right? Does anybody disagree with that even? I love to be challenged, so shout it out if you do. No, good, good. All right, so before we dig into the buyer-seller dance here, I want everybody either to write this down or put it in your mind. Think about what your top selling challenges are. It can be 3 things, it can be 5 things, it can be 1 thing, but I want you to think about, where do I stall? Where do I get objections? Where do I get stuck? So I'm just going to give everybody a few things just to think about, an example they had, and just kind of implant that in their mind as we go through this. All right. So we're going to do a little exercise, and we're going to break into breakout rooms for this. But whenever a buyer and seller come together for the first time, there are a few things at work. There are 2 systems at work. There's a seller that has a system, and then there's a buyer that has a system. And the selling side might have formal sales training, ideally Sandler sales training, or a system defined by their company, or they're doing what feels natural to them. A lot of people say, hey, I'm a natural seller. I communicate well. I have interpersonal skills that give me success in selling. But either way, there's a set of steps, a process involved that goes something like this. You find somebody that's interested, you create a proposal for them, and you try to close them. You handle some objections as best you can, right? That's the seller system. For better or worse, buyers typically have no formal system. There aren't a lot of buying methodologies and training out there as much as there are selling systems. So buyers have learned to work through a system through life experiences or by observing, their seniors or other buyers. But either way, they're kind of going through what feels intuitive to them. And so for this breakout room, we've taken both the selling system and the buying system and broken them down into just 5 steps, just for simplicity's sake. And we know that especially selling can be a lot more complex, but just for the purposes of the game, we're just going to break it down into 5 steps. So what I'm going to ask everybody to do is organize these 5 steps into what a traditional seller would do. What's step 1? What's step 2, 3, 4, 5? So Dan, if you could break us out into breakout rooms, how many people do we have in here?
We are looking at 16 of us. Do you want to be included in the breakouts?
No, I would love for it to be super objective. Let's go 4 groups of 4 then.
All right.
Deal? And the prerequisite here is that this is a typical seller, and they are going to, this isn't a cold call that they're just going to get the door slammed in their face or hung up on. This is, they're going to go through the cycle, all 5 of these steps. All right. Does anybody have any questions?
How many minutes?
Let's just go 2 minutes. And then when we come back in, I'm going to ask on one of the groups to just present what steps, what order you guys came up with. Deal? All right, let's go.
All right, starting now, make sure you accept your room invite.
All right. All right. Do we have everybody back in?
Yep, looks like we're whole.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. I realized I meant to tell you to take a screenshot of this because you guys probably couldn't see that. But let's just start with room 1. Doug, because I know you, I'm going to pick on you. What did you guys come up with?
Well, of course, I didn't get a chance to screenshot it, and so
Did you guys at least see the broadcast message?
we did look at it and discuss it. So
Well, I can talk to it since I wrote it down.
yeah, go for it.
There you go.
So
gold star for you.
yeah, we came up with needs analysis, presentation, or present or propose, objections, close, and then, well, I came up with close and follow up. Doug thought follow up then close.
That's not bad. All right. Yeah. So what we have and what we've come up with is very close to that. Conduct needs analysis, present or propose, and then ideally attempt to close. Hey, I've given you a solution. Does this make sense? Are we ready to, sign that check, write the PO, whatever it is? Handle objections. Maybe they say, hey, I have some questions before we do that. And then, all right, I'm gonna follow up with you, right? A lot of people also do swap out handle objections and attempt to close. That's a common switch there. But ultimately, this is a general process that most sellers follow, right? Did anybody have anything wildly different? All right, that's fine. Good. We're generally on the same page that this is what a seller does. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do the exact same exercise, but this side for the buyer. And this can be B2B, B2C. This can be, hey, I'm buying myself a new car or, new backpack, whatever it is. But we'll do same groups, 2 minutes. Go ahead and take a screenshot of this. And I am going to tell you a little bit of context here before we kick it off. Buyers are smart and they know they're not going to get very far if they just email you or text you or just say, hey, send me a proposal on X, just give me a quote. So most salespeople are not going to respond to that. They're just going to say, hey, I know my time is worth more than that. So buyers know they need to do something else first, something that draws the salesperson in to get the detailed info that they want or need to do their job, right? So the hint for this one is the first step is not obtain information, but everybody take a screenshot and then we'll go back into breakout rooms.
On your cue, Rob.
All right, go ahead.
Make sure you accept those room invites.
All right. So, organizing the steps for a buyer. Who wants to present what their group came up with?
I can. It's Karen.
All right, Karen, go right ahead.
Well, we thought that we could have expressed interest or obtained information first.
Mm-hmm.
Either one of those could happen, and then act motivated, and then avoid commitment and disappear.
Okay. Why did you come up with obtain information first? Out of curiosity.
For instance, right now we're obtaining information from you about Sandler system, and then we might express interest afterwards. But sometimes we express interest first and then go online to do research or call the company or walk into the store to obtain information.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. The premise of this is that it is a meeting happening between a buyer and a seller. So yeah, absolutely. We might do some preliminary research to obtain information. But what we're trying to highlight here is obtain information from the buyer. So I could have prefaced that as well. But yeah, you're not wrong. And a big point here is that you're expressing interest and acting motivated pretty early on, right? That's what's drawing in that buyer, right? So what we came up with in Sandler is express interest. Hey, come on in. Let's have this meeting. I do want to talk. And you're going to act motivated. You're going to say, yeah, I do want to know what you got going on, what your service is. And then I'm going to get some information. I'm going to get some details about your company. I'm going to, ask questions. You'll ask questions. So we'll have a conversation. And then I'm going to avoid commitment. I'm going to say, hey, I need to do something before I send money, write a PO, put pen to paper. And then I usually ghost. I disappear, right? So does that sound like something that people go through in their selling process? Yeah, I see Shannon's nodding her head. This is Emily Galindo, the owner of the NIA chapter I belong to. We all, pretty joking but pretty serious, we say we come to commiserate together because selling is hard, because this is kind of what we all go through. And especially when you pair those buying steps and those selling steps together, it's pretty deadly. So you express interest. Yes, Mr. Seller or Mrs. Seller, I do want to hear what you have to say. All right, let me come in and let me ask you some questions. Let me understand what's going on in your world. And they're going to say, oh yeah, those are things that are going on in my world. Those are keeping me up at night. Those are, headaches I'm having. All right, well, I got an answer to that, right? Let me tell you all the things that I can do for you. Let me tell you my value props, my differentiation, our price point, our lead time, what we're doing differently or better, why we're going to be a better fit for you, right? And as I'm presenting all of that, the buyer is getting all of this information, right? They're getting all the details that you're more than willing to share, right? And so once I've given them what I feel is enough information to make a decision, right? Because raise your hand or shout out yes if you think, if I can educate my clients enough with enough information, if I can equip them with all of the information on the market and our services and our differentiation, they're going to make a decision, right? They're going to buy. Does that sound familiar to people? So what happens often is they're going to say, hey, I need to run this up my manager, or I need to think about this. I have to think it over. I need to talk to our finance team, or, now isn't the right time. Down the line, we can do this. And so I'm going to say, is there anything else that we missed? Is there anything, is price an issue? Is lead time an issue? What can we do to overcome those gaps, right? And ultimately, they're just going to say, hey, we need to meet again in 2 weeks or in a month or next quarter, whatever it is, but they're just going to ghost. And then we're going to just be left following up with them, right? Does that sound?
I had a scheduled appointment today that got ghosted.
And it sucks, right?
And it kind of got rescheduled twice, and I had a full-blown appointment for the interest. And
Yeah.
after many reasons and reschedules, ghosted.
Yeah. All those reasons they're giving, they might be legitimate, they might be not, but ultimately they have the power, the buyer has the power to avoid those commitments, right? So this is a perfect system if you're a buyer. Not so great for us as a seller. So question, shout it out. Where do we think the seller lost control of this process? At what step?
Maybe attempting to close.
Yeah, maybe attempting to close. Why do you think that, Karen?
Sorry to interrupt. Can you put the steps back up? Because, oh, hang on a minute. I took a picture. No worries.
Can everybody see the steps here?
Yes.
Yeah, you're good.
All right. Yeah. So, Karen, why do you think at attempt to close? Why did we lose them there?
I mean, I'm thinking about it that they're presenting and proposing, the person's getting information, but I don't see anywhere in here where, I mean, maybe in conducting a needs analysis, but I don't really see where they're getting emotional involvement of the prospect, where the prospect is like opening their kimono and talking about what's really, really going on. And I don't know if in the needs analysis, because it's happening up front, they've built enough trust to get to that point.
Yeah, fair. There isn't necessarily trust built there. So it does seem pretty transactional where they're just getting a lot of information here, right? And where, what are they getting information from? It's from this right here, right? So this tying right there. Shannon, what did you want to add in?
I actually think you can lose it if you present too soon. You're just assuming they're interested, and right now they're just motivated. And I think that handling objections needs to be moved up, because when you're obtaining information or anything else, or conducting a needs analysis, people always give some kind of objection very early on, and you should address, even if they don't mention it, address the objections before they mention it. And so I think a lot of times people are presenting too soon, when therefore attempting to close too soon, without actually listening and overcoming obstacles.
Absolutely. Nail on the head, Shannon. When we are presenting so early on, Derek, did you want to add something in?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that piggyback off of Karen, I think she's spot on. To me, it is the conduct needs analysis. I think too often in our eagerness to try to get someone to believe in our product like we do, we focus around facts, figures, price, things that are obviously important. But if you don't make the emotional connection, if you don't figure out, okay, you're buying this to achieve what? To grow as a business, to beat a certain competitor, to become a subject matter expert in your field, without knowing some of those things that you can often pull out of the needs analysis, you're not going to be able to effectively present or handle those true objections, because you don't understand why it is that they're buying your product or service.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. No, both of those are great. And thank you everybody for your thoughts, your contributions. You're totally right. This conduct needs analysis does need to be thorough, right? And we also need to have a level of rapport and trust built with the buyer, so that when we see this motivation and interest, we can tell ourselves if it's legitimate or not. Because if we get to this step, present or propose, and we don't actually know if there's legitimate interest, a legitimate need, something to drive change or adoption, we're just presenting too early. And so that's it. Nail on the head is when we are presenting or proposing so early on in the cycle, we've handed over all of the information that the buyer needs, and they don't need us anymore, right? So they have the ability to just avoid commitment and ghost, just disappear, or just give us put-offs, right? We say at Sandler, we call that spilling our candy in the lobby. We've just given away everything that we came up to to sell, and we don't even get invited upstairs. So how many of you fallen victim? We had one example of somebody that had a great meeting and then it was just pushed out and then ghosted. Does that happen to anybody else? Yeah, Kathy, absolutely. And it sucks. It's happened to me. It's happened to me a lot. And there is ways to avoid it, and we'll touch on that, right? But one thing I do want to ask you guys is, if we are having a meeting and we're giving away all this information, is that any different than doing free consulting for our business? If you're saying this is everything that you can do, this is what the market's doing, here's differentiation that you should be looking for, here's where your struggles can be resolved with a solution, how is that any different than free consulting? No, it's not, right? If I tell all of my information, all of my differentiation, all of my value propositions without getting any sort of compensation or commitment from the buyer, that's free consulting, right? So now we know the moment we give up our information without control, that's free consulting. And if we want a different outcome, if we want a different process, we have to drive a different process. We have to do something different, because this system just doesn't work. But it's what sellers have been doing for decades. I coincidentally ran into somebody that just a few years ago was selling Cutco knives, but I use the example of a door-to-door salesman with Cutco knives in a briefcase knocking on the door, and say I answer the door and I say, "Oh, hey, tell me what you got," and they say, "All right, come on in." I invite them in, and they say, "All right, let's look at your knives. Tell me about how many times you've cut a finger or how often you have to change out your knives." And I say, "Oh yeah, that happens all the time. Do you have a solution for that?" And right here, they start telling me all the knives they have and the price points and the material it's made out of. And I'm just obtaining all of that information along the way, right? And then once they've empowered me, they've educated me to make a decision, they say, "All right, well, how can I get some of these Cutco knives in your kitchen today?" And I say, "Oh, well, I can't really make a decision until my wife is home. I'm not just going to drop a few $100s on these beautiful knives you have. I'm still acting motivated throughout the process." And he says, "Well, is there anything else I can do to help you make a decision today, to get these knives in your hands today?" And I say, "You know what? You have my number. I have your number even. I'm going to give you a call later today after I talk to my wife." And he's just going to probably be chasing me. He maybe has my phone number or my email, sends me marketing material, whatever it is, but I haven't committed to anything. And so in this buyer-seller dance, in this dynamic, who's actually leading that dance? Is it the buyer or the seller?
Buyer, 100%.
Yeah, the buyer. Buyer's getting all the information, right? They're asking questions, we're answering. And almost to just answer my second question, what sort of dynamic does that create? It just creates a situation where, especially with somebody that you're having multiple meetings with, they're expecting, they ask a question, you answer it. They ask another question, we answer. And we think we're being helpful. We think we're building trust, and they're seeing us as a professional and expert and knowledgeable, so that they like us, they trust us, and they're going to come to us for information so that they're going to buy from us. But what's really happening is we're creating a pattern of transactional behavior, and we're reinforcing it every time we do that. And it doesn't take long for that pattern to become firmly established. And I've just defined myself as helpful and responsible source of valuable information, and I'm eager to serve, right? So what can we do differently? And I made this little graphic just for fun, but to get away from the traditional selling process, we have to do something different. And so Sandler has adopted and changed. Sandler's been around for over 50 years. I don't want to put an incorrect date, but it's decades. And we've adopted and changed and grown our system, adapted to the modern buyer. We have a modern seller adapting to the modern buyer, right? So that's the Sandler selling system. And here it is. This is our system, and we call it, this is our Sandler methodology. And it's not a silver bullet that ensures that you win every sales opportunity. But what it does is it gives you a much higher degree of control with buyers. You're in control of that dance. You're leading the steps, right? And from that game that we played at the very first thing we did, if I know the steps I'm going to take, and I'm also setting the expectation of this is the process we're going to follow, then that in turn helps us improve closing ratios or speed to close. So I'm going to go through these pretty quickly here, just at a high level, but I want to ask you guys first, what do you see that's different here? Shout it out.
It's not linear.
Definitely, it's not linear. And that previous one, it just kind of ended with the ghosting and follow-up, right? And this is cyclical. So yes, absolutely. What else?
The upfront contract, getting an agreement.
Yes,
to
absolutely.
make some type of decision.
Definitely. And this is, I'll touch on that here in a minute, but this is a form of communication. This isn't, hey, sign this letter of representation. No, I literally was talking to a realtor yesterday that says, hey, our upfront contract is, signing this. But even to get to the point of signing a letter of representation, you need to get some commitment before you're taking your client out to lunch or you're driving across town. So that's absolutely, Bill. This is a huge point of Sandler. And somebody actually just gave me the updated statistic. It's over 70%. Sellers that use an upfront contract have a 70% higher rate of getting a decision or having a defined outcome from their meeting than not. And that isn't always a yes, but I would rather know upfront if we're going to get to a no so that I can move on to the next thing, right? Who would rather know upfront, hey, this is not worth my time, than spending an hour on a phone call, a discovery call, going out to lunch, driving across town. I live in Houston. Driving across town can take 3 hours. So yeah, what else? There's another big thing that I do want to try and pull out of you guys. What else do you see that's different?
Understanding the pain.
Yes, pain. This qualification here, first step is pain. And there are a few different forms of pain. There's pain in the present, pain in the future. There's also opposite of pain is gain in the present, gain in the future. And not just surface level pain, but digging into pain. Emotional drivers. People are fearful of the future or concerned or confused by what's going on. There's so much AI out there that I don't know what to make heads or tail of. And so I'm looking for a solution. I have an emotional driver. Pain is a very broad category, but that's what's going to drive change. What else? What else do we see that's different? Quick question. Where is present solution?
At the end.
It's at the end. I forget who it was that said it, but I think more than one person said it. When we present too early, we're spilling our candy in the lobby. We're giving away all this information without properly qualifying or disqualifying our opportunities. And so we need to live and breathe in this qualifying space for a lot longer than we are. Because The second we go through a needs analysis and we hear a little bit of interest, we hear a little positive feedback, we get happy ears, and we say, oh, let me tell you how I can do that. But we need to go through this step by step. When you're going through that numbers game, you can't just skip 3, you can't just skip 14 and go on to 17, whatever it is. You need to go step by step, and you need to follow the process and not jump to present to solution. All right? So quickly, high level going through this. Communication, personal chemistry, bonding and rapport, building trust. We need to do that. One thing that we do teach within Sandler is how to do that effectively, and not just, hey, let's chit chat about the weather or my kid's soccer game, or how horribly the Texans are doing. There's a balance between professional bonding and rapport and personal, and there is some overlap in there, but we're building trust. The upfront contract is the next thing. This is all about establishing clear parameters for the current interaction you're having, the current conversation, why we're together, what we do to plan, what we plan to accomplish in this meeting. And it's not just setting an agenda. Anybody can set an agenda. There is a verbal back and forth that we coach to set expectations and outcomes. Big thing we're doing here with the upfront contract is inviting a no. I would rather know that in the first few minutes of the conversation, this is not something that's going to make sense. And then also after we've gone through the conversation, I want you comfortable telling me no. Next up, qualification. And to parallel with qualification, the opposite of qualification, disqualification. As much as we're qualifying and figuring out, hey, what pains do you have? What problems do you have? What's the reason behind those problems, and what's the impact of those problems? If I'm not finding any problems, or the impact isn't great enough, if the pain is not great enough, then I'm disqualifying as much as I am qualifying. Investment is not just budgetary investment. It's also resources, it's people, it's time, it's effort. Decision-making process. This is the who, what, where, when, why, how of a successful solution. And all of these things together create a full qualification. If we don't have any one of these things in full, we haven't fully qualified. We might get lucky in you can sell on pain alone, but you can't sell without pain. But we also don't want to be just selling down to cost, right? If all we're doing is talking about budget and we're just selling, hey, we're the cheapest solution, you're going to lose out to the next cheapest guy. So after we've gone through a full qualification in depth, then we present our solution. We go through best practices for how and when to present a solution, how to overcome objections. And ideally, there are no objections to overcome because you have properly qualified. But a lot of people are still going to push back. Buyers know what they're doing, and they're going to still try and pull a little bit more out of you. Knowing how to handle that is something that we coach. Last but not least, you actually follow through and you do what you said you're going to do. And a lot of us, especially networking, that's where we're asking for referrals. We're asking for what's the next project, and we're going through cyclically, right? So when I ask, what trouble do you have selling? Just shout some things out or ask me a question. Hey, where does this pain point fit into this cycle? How can I address that with the Sandler system?
Prospecting.
That's a great one. And everybody thinks, hey, prospecting is marketing, but you're going to be prospecting and figuring out, hey, is this prospect worthy of my time? Is this a legitimate opportunity? Part of the upfront contract is understanding, hey, at the end of this conversation, we're going to have two outcomes. Yes, it makes sense we're first going to invite the no. No, it really doesn't make sense for us to move forward. Or yes, it does. And let's define next steps. So as you're prospecting, if you have a nice big list of cold calling that you have to do, You need to set the stage for the outcomes of that meeting so that you're not just chasing the same prospect to a dead end. Does that make sense? Does that answer your prospecting question?
In part, and I think meeting the prospect is a challenge for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say any more than that, but yes, you were already on the second step of what I consider the prospecting methods. And I'm like having trouble with the first step.
Just getting in the door then?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's part of communication. So there's pattern interrupts that we teach, cold calling techniques with 30-second commercials, and basically getting in incremental steps. If I'm knocking on a door, they're cracking open the door. All right, can I get 30 seconds of your time? From that 30 seconds, does it make sense for us to have a 15-minute conversation? So part of prospecting is communication, and we do teach that. So there's a lot to dig into there, but definitely reach out to me and we can dig into some more there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. What else? Who loses on price? Or who thinks they lose on price? Raise your hand. Nobody? Everybody's got the lowest price in the market? Oh, Derek, perfect. Lose on price. Where do we think price falls into this? And I'll give you a hint. It's not in budget. Anybody?
I don't know. Maybe
upfront contract, maybe?
I was going to say maybe either communication or pain. Because in my experience, when I've lost on price, I'll put it like this. It's been my experience that buyers have three options. You can buy my solution, you can buy the competitor, or you can hold what you got and keep doing what you're doing. And if I haven't shown them the difference, whether it is cost, not just the cost of what the item is, but cost of ownership, service contracts, maintenance, etc., but also the cost of doing what they're still doing. So if I don't find a way to pull that out of them and communicate that, then that's usually where I lose on cost, because I haven't generated enough pain to make them do something different.
Absolutely. And it's not that you're generating pain. It's that they have pain. Is that pain great enough? And applying a financial number to it, a monetary number to that pain is definitely something you want to do. But is that pain great enough to enact change? There's going to be a threshold between the lowest cost solution and whatever margin you're making. And that difference is pain. People are going to pay money to get away from pain. And the higher the pain, the more money they're going to spend. I need to get something. My water heater's broke. I need to pay somebody to get out here right now so my wife is not taking cold showers. I'm going to pay more money to have that plumber come out today, right? So that's where a lot of people think that they're losing on price, but you're totally right. They're losing on pain. They haven't identified pain, or they maybe have identified a surface level pain, but they haven't dug into the depth of pain. All right. And I think we're coming up at our time. Is that right, Dan?
Yeah, we are coming up at 4:00 here.
So I do want to let you guys end with a little bit of a quote. And just like I said, we got to live and die in this qualification stage. Qualify hard to close easy. I wish I could put a name to that quote. I've heard a lot of Sandler people say it, but I was told that so early on. And that's where a lot of success came from for me. So that's where you need to live and breathe, is in that qualification stage. And then the closing is done. They've closed themselves. They've given you all the information to make a decision. So that's me. Any other questions? Pick my brain. I'd love to. Have I just blown everybody's mind and nobody has any thoughts or questions?
Y'all could feel free to unmute. You could hold the space bar to unmute yourself. Rob, I do want to say thank you very much. This was a lot of information here, and I do know it's going to start helping folks to qualify for their presentations here.
Good. And I'll hang out if anybody else wants to stay in and pick my brain. Happy to go through the process a little bit more, give you a little real life experience and see where it applies to the Sandler methodology or where the Sandler methodology can help.
Yeah, I would like to hang on.
Yeah, ask away.
So I'm in a field where there is a pain, but it's not immediate pain. Like it's not breaking the water heater or the AC not working. My pain is my pain is a general pain that everybody is going to have or everybody has, but it's not an immediate pain or it's something that needs to be done immediately. So that's where I get a lot of ghosting or pushback, because I have to give all information up front and people don't act on it.
A big thing is a lot of people fall into the trap of giving up all that information that I want to empower the buyer, right? So that upfront contract can be useful for you, but there's the question of what is the cost of not acting now? When that pain comes to light, what is the difference in cost? Hey, do I need to pay to maintain my water heater before it goes out? Do I need to have it inspected? Do I need to consider something in advance? There are 4 types of pain, as I said. There's pain in the present, pain in the future, gain in the present, gain in the future are the other 2. But the biggest driving factor, you're absolutely right, is that pain in the present. That pain in the future can still exist, and whatever your solution is, whatever your product or service is, that pain can or will come. So the question becomes, what is the cost of acting now versus what is the cost of acting later, right? What's the impact of not making a decision now? Have you ever asked your clients that?
Yeah, the issue over here is that to explain what impact it will have to not have taken action today or now, and for them to what will happen if they wait in the future, I have to give all the information.
What, if you don't mind me asking, what is it that you're selling?
I do life insurance, long-term care.
Yeah, life insurance is, and I'm just gonna, so you can see my face here, but yeah, life insurance is a long-term plan. But there's also so many other things that we do proactively, right? We invest in our 401k, or we, set aside money in savings. How is that any different than investing in life insurance? And so I would almost encourage you to ask more prying questions of how they see life insurance before you're giving the solution. Have them give a little bit of context of their interpretation of, do they have a negative stigma of life insurance, or do they invest in other things? Is it a personality mismatch? See you, Doug. Thanks for joining. Is it a personality mismatch between somebody that just doesn't invest in their future, or they don't set aside money, or maybe they don't have the fear of financial burden for anybody that they would leave behind? So maybe it's understanding the client's mentality around it a little bit before you're just educating them on, hey, this is what life insurance is.
Wow. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
And one thing we coach is one thing we also coach on, because Sandler is psychology based, and we do personality type training. So I personally train on DISC. And so different personalities are more analytical, more direct, more immediate action versus long term. And so identifying personalities, communication styles, and how people make decisions is a big part of how you present. So in that communication stage, in that bonding and rapport, identifying the personality of your prospect or your client can be as impactful as the actual presentation itself.
Makes sense. Makes
Yeah.
sense. Where can
Great
I get
question,
more
though.
information about Sandler's services?
Yeah, so I am in NIA, so you can look me up in the app.
Okay.
But on the last slide of the presentation, there's also my website, my phone number. I'm based in Houston, but I can operate anywhere in the world. But definitely reach out to me. Add me on LinkedIn, whatever it is. Let's connect.
Yes, I'm going to connect with everybody that's here today.
Great.
So
Right.
look out for my invite on LinkedIn.
All right.
Awesome.
Well, Rob,
Thanks, Athena.
thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for being here today. And you were talking about personality types, and there's a little something that we could look forward to at our next speaker series presentation. It's going to be none other than Miss Sherry Tree of Bank. She's talking about her brand of personality science. So I do encourage everyone to check that out. Rob, once again, thank you for being here with us today. It was wonderful. Reach out to Rob on networkinaction.com. I also found him on LinkedIn, like he said. And this is Sandler Sales. Again, a great methodology. I know a lot of our franchisees utilize a lot of that sales approach. So
Yeah.
check it out. Rob's a man. Thank you again, Rob. And I hope to see you all at the next speaker series and our Network with the Nations on May 6th. See you there and take care.
Bye, everyone.